Thanks for joining us today here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner. And myself, my name is Chris Swan. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been with us for a little while, we really do appreciate you taking the time to join us. Here's how you reach out, 419-794-3030. It's 419-794-3030, online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. On today's show, why more than 70% of Americans regret the way they've managed money, plus some tips on solving the retirement income puzzle. But first, let me check in. Guys, glad to be with you as always. How are we doing today?
We're doing very, very well. It's a beautiful sunny day, although the weather is starting to get a little cooler, which I'm not real big fan of that, but doing well here. Very, very busy time with, as you all know from prior shows, myself, I'm coming to the end of the annual enrollment period, and I can't wait until I can come up for a breath of air. It's been busy. It's been a great AEP and helping a lot of people out.
Yeah, picture you like an accountant during tax season time. So just looking for that deadline to get here, but it's not too far away. And I also had a great week, another hockey week. We've got hockey last week and hockey this week and hockey every weekend, which is good time and something fun to do with my family when it is cold out. And it's great always to be here. So we've got a great show lined up for everybody today, and appreciate everybody tuning in.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive right in here. When you think about all the things that you can do with a smartphone, you know, it's kind of funny to remember the old days when Bell actually had to explain to us how to use a rotary dial phone.
Before calling any number, first secure the number from your new directory. Then remove the receiver and listen for the dial tone. It sounds like this. That tone indicates everything is ready for your call. With the receiver off the hook, dial the desired number. This is the ringing signal. If the line is busy, you'll hear this busy signal.
Now, I don't even think dial tones and busy signals exist anymore. We've obviously come a long way with technology, but what about with financial planning? How different is planning for retirement today than it was in our parents' or grandparents' day?
You know, that's really funny, that lead in there. You know, back when I started my career, I worked with in insurance, and this is 27 years ago. I worked with a couple of us would come back into the office after hours, and we would make cold calls. And we had this phone. One of them was a rotary dial, then we had push button. But there was a button on the phone where you could actually push and hold it down, and you could listen in to the conversation. So the other more seasoned sales agent, he said, here's what I want you to do. You sit in this room, hold that button down, and listen, and this will kind of get you an idea on how to make these presentations and how to sell and things like that. So I did that. It was kind of neat. And then I remember back when I was a kid, we had what's called party lines. And there were like 4 or 5 houses on the street where you could pick up the phone and actually hear a conversation, to the neighbors down the street having a conversation. And you just click in and say, hey, hi, how's it going? But, jump into technology today, with the health insurance, you can actually, when I sign you up with a health plan, you can actually log in, create an account, and get all of your claim information, everything right on your smartphone. But Nolan, I know you've talked a lot about with technology and investments and with all of the different softwares you have. I utilize the websites for these companies, but what software programs do you have?
Well, I think there are a lot of great things that have come out. We've talked about some of the financial planning software. If we think about things like, in the 26 years that I've been in business, the good old days, you did a lot of stuff with pen and paper. You had to do a lot of research by looking up prospectuses and diving deep into it. Nowadays we have some great websites that are out there. So anybody who's listening, if you ever want to do research on some of the investments that you own, one of the public websites that I think is great to take a look at is morningstar.com. That's a site that we use. What it can do is show you, how your mutual funds or investments are doing when you look at them in comparison to everybody else. It gives you information like, are you, taking the right level of risk? It's very good for analytical nerds like me that like data, and to be able to make quick decisions when comparing a couple of different investments together. Also for consumers, the software Riskalyze does a fantastic job really trying to help pinpoint what a specific risk number is for an investor. Now, we just did a show last week talking about risk and how risk is more than just a number. But a lot of people, if you're listening today, if you don't know what the risk level is in your investments, that absolutely is a great starting point. So instead of thinking, well, I'm a conservative or moderate aggressive investor, you have the ability through software like Riskalyze that within about a 95% confidence, be able to pinpoint what should be the normal range of returns in the portfolio based upon normal market conditions. And that way, an investor is much more educated going into the markets to know about, things, maybe are a little bit too aggressive right now. Maybe it's an opportunity to rebalance, or where there are opportunities to try to optimize the portfolio. I also utilize the software Right Capital a lot. Right Capital is the financial planning software. And one of the nice things about that is you can quickly do an analysis of like 3,000 possible things that could happen to determine the probability of success of a retiree being able to meet their goals. So like, what if taxes went higher? Inflation's been a hot topic this year. How does that impact, the overall portfolio in the long run? What if tax rates double? So by going into some of the software, it really helps, pinpoint it. If those of you that are listening today, if you have, any concerns or questions about, the confidence of your current plan, I would say that technology can absolutely be one of the resources to help build up that confidence and or evaluate maybe where some of the weaknesses that could be in your portfolio, maybe where there's some opportunities to be able to increase things too. But we've said on the radio, being on the radio now over 20 years here locally on WSBD, we oftentimes talk about things aren't like they used to be. And that's good and bad, right? There's a lot of good and bad. I mean, some of the things that maybe is different today than your grandparents' retirement is oftentimes somebody would go work for a company their entire career, they'd retire, they'd get this solid pension, and between pension and Social Security, that would cover the lion's share of their income. And if they were smart enough to save and invest, they had a little bit extra money to boot. Pensions are really kind of a thing of the past. I'm 45, and, from my generation and younger, we have the 401ks, so we have companies that are saying, we're willing to put money in a retirement vehicle, but only if you do it also. And so going and working for a company isn't always the same either. People oftentimes change jobs. Maybe there's an opportunity for more income by going to another company. Maybe the company downsizes, but you don't see that I work for a company for 25, 30 years anymore, and that's why you see some of the changes. The old approach of investing, I think, also has some flaws with it. So there's a strategy called modern portfolio theory. Now, this strategy was created back in like the 1960s. So I don't know about you, Scott, but I don't know how modern that would be.
From 1960?
Right. Good, helpful information, but the thought process back then was you would combine a combination of stocks and bonds, and based upon your risk level, it would tell you what your allocation might be suggested. So maybe you're a 60-40 mix. And maybe as you get older into retirement time, maybe you go 40% equities and 60% fixed income. Well, if we flash forward, maybe what they didn't know decades ago is the fact that here we are in this 2021, almost 2022, with decade-low level interest rates. So, back in the good old days where you could live off the interest of bond funds, that interest rate has dropped dramatically. And so it causes you to think a little bit different about ways that you can allocate your funds and things that can be, different. The other thing I'd say as I round up this particular topic is the 24-hour news stations of financial news in your face all the time oftentimes will lead investors to make more short-term decisions and make them buy and sell more often, which can be costly in the long-term approach. There's been so many times that I've come in the morning where I've seen like the news talk about today's going to be one of the greatest days ever to be invested into the market, and whatever happens, and I come back after lunch and all of a sudden it's talking about today's the worst day ever.
Sure.
So those emotions can really drive you a lot. So again, a lot of great things about technology. It's a matter of figuring out how do you apply that to be able to put yourself in the good potential to achieve the outcomes that you want for the level of risk that you're willing to take. And then there's also things that are different that the good old days had some advantages and that we don't have today.
So Nolan, let me ask. You've been in this for 25 years and helping people out with their financial portfolios and that. Have you seen over the past 25 years, are people more in tune to what's going on today? Maybe because of all of the news outlets. I mean, you can't. I've been in different offices and where they've got a TV in the background and the Bloomberg report. There's all kinds of stuff scrolling. But have you seen a change where the investor is more in tuned and more willing to look at their own stuff on a day-to-day basis now versus, say, 15, 20 years ago? Has that changed a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was with another hockey father last weekend, and we were sitting around just talking about how his dad at lunchtime used to leave for lunch, and he would walk down to the broker's office because that's the only way he could get the financial news of the day.
Right.
And that's how he spent his lunch, is going down to check the stock prices. And, I live in Waterville. There used to be a ticker tape downtown Waterville that you could see, and I thought that was nostalgia. You really should have kept that. Where today, on my phone or even, on the TV or the computer, you can instantaneously get that information. Now, does that make you a smarter investor? I guess. Depends on how you use that information.
Maybe more educated.
Maybe more educated, but sometimes, you have to look at what the end goal of that education is, too. So I'll give you another good example is I'll get emails that people will send to me that says, hey, watch this 45-minute video about how the end of the world is coming for the United States dollar, and that you should move all of your money into, another investment like precious metals or currency. And then I'll always have to tell people to say, well, you have to start with the end of the video first and see, what are they pitching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And then back it up from that way, because sometimes that information can lead you down the wrong path and get you caught up into it. And I guess that's why it's important, like we as our fiduciary, we work in our clients' best interests and take a look. And a lot of times clients are working with us for, giving them specific advice. And, what's good for the accountant or your kids or neighbors isn't always necessarily good for you. So you have to be careful of, every investor should do this. And oftentimes there's no Swiss Army knife when it comes to investing. There's still value into figuring out what is the right thing for your individual situation, and then figuring out when's the best time to kind of execute those ideas.
Technology can be both a blessing and a curse. And a great example, not necessarily in the financial realm, but it will kind of tie in is, when my wife and I bought our first house and we had home repairs that needed to be done, and I looked online and I said, oh, I can do that. I can take care of this. I can take care of that, because there were instructional videos on there. Those instructional videos were being put on by professionals, by electricians, by plumbers. And let me tell you, I made a couple trips to the home repair store because I didn't do it right the first time, but I thought I could because they made it look so easy. It's the same sort of thing in the financial realm. People can make it look easy, and it's not as easy as simply just walking out the door and going back to Home Depot or what have you to pick up, an extra wrench or anything. If you make a mistake in the financial side, it can be pretty detrimental all in all to your retirement. So it does take a bit of self-awareness. Is this something that I feel comfortable with handling on my own? And if not, or, just get a second opinion with the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, 419-794-3030. It's 419-794-3030, or use that technology and go to the website, americasretirementheadquarters.com. We hear a lot about the importance of year-end tax planning. So guys, can you give us some specific examples of the kinds of things that we could do between now and December 31st that might benefit us?
Yeah, end of the year is just so close. So these are things that are immediate attention items that if you haven't taken a look at it, hopefully you can take this checklist and kind of walk through some of these. And of course, make sure you have a conversation with your accountant or tax professional before you make any important tax decisions. But one of the things that, number one, you want to do is determine if you will itemize or take the standard deduction. Because with number two, sometimes you want to bunch your deductions together. That means that this could be the year that you pile a lot of those things that could be deductible expenses, where next year maybe you plan to take the itemized deduction, and or vice versa. Number three is make sure that you understand about qualified charitable contributions. For those of you who are over the age 72, if you're donating to charity, be it your church or an organization that's important to you, if you're doing that now and you're over 72 and you're not doing it with some of your required minimum distributions, you could be missing out on an incredible tax strategy. Number 3 is making sure that you time, or number 4, I should say, time your income and expenses. So as a business owner, a small business owner, there's certain times that, we want to buy computers and equipment and talented people, and there's other times that maybe you want to push that off to next year. Number 5 is maximizing your pre-tax deductions. Number 6 is maximizing your retirement plan contributions. Number 7 is if you're self-employed, consider some type of profit sharing or self-employed SEP IRA plan. Number 8, consider the Roth conversion and have the analysis done before year end. Number 9 is if you have a taxable investment account, looking at what your realized gains and unrealized gains and losses have been, so you can harvest some of those tax planning strategies. And number 10 is don't forget about annual gifts, with Christmas right around the corner. If that's something that is part of your planning process, looking at what your annual gifts are. So there's your top 10 countdown, and with only a couple of weeks to go, hopefully gives you a couple different things to do. Again, the importance is take a look, because at December 31st, there's really not a whole lot you can do to change the 2021 tax planning year.
So, Nolan, let me ask a quick question for you, because I get this question a lot for myself. HSA accounts, health savings accounts. So if someone wants to make a contribution, they have until April 15th to make a contribution for that prior year. Is that correct?
Well, possibly. Again, you'd have to look at when they filed their tax return, and definitely always talk with your accountant in case you're worried about what the actual deadlines are. But sometimes it is April 15th, just like IRA contributions. But again, you got to understand the fine print until you file your tax return. So sometimes it could be too late after you, miss those deadlines too.
So like an HSA, for those of you listening out there, HSA health savings account, that helps you moving into retirement, moving into Medicare. That's going to help you with paying some of those out-of-pocket expenses you may have. And we always encourage you to, contribute the maximum amount that your budget will allow you to for a health savings account, because it is a pretty nice tax deduction there. It's tax-free money, and who doesn't want to spend tax-free money?
Absolutely. That's more money you get to keep towards whatever you want to use. And this kind of goes back to what I was talking about in the previous question, things that you may not be equipped yourself to handle on your own. And I think this is definitely one of those where deferring to professionals will come in handy. America's Retirement Headquarters is available at picking up the phone and giving a call, 419-794-3030. That's how you reach out. Set up a time. We'll speak to them. Don't wait until December 30th, like we talked about with the annual election period last week. Don't wait until the last minute. Go ahead and get a jump on it right now and make the moves now. So that's one less thing you have to worry about going into 2022. 419-794-3030. As we try to figure out how much money we're going to actually have in retirement and whether it's going to last us 20 or 30 years, there is one word that we tend to hear over and over again.
Let's talk about market volatility.
The recent market volatility.
You've had volatility in the last week.
A new, quote, regime for volatility.
When you see a lot of volatility.
The Dow plunging 800 points today as market volatility ramps up in a big way.
Just in case you didn't pick up on it, the word there is volatility. During our working years, when we're still building our nest egg, volatility is not really that big of an issue, but when we retire, it becomes a huge issue. Guys, is this the point in our lives when we need to start paying more attention to the amount of risk we're actually taking in our portfolios?
Yeah, volatility can be a great thing, and it can be a terrible thing. Just really, it depends. So as they talked about, when you're younger and you're contributing to your retirement account, whether the market goes up or down, if the market's down because of volatility, you're getting to contribute more and more shares and buy more and more shares with the same amount of money. But when you get into retirement time, it's actually, the term is reverse dollar cost averaging. So if an investor is in retirement and they're pulling income off of their portfolio, as the market prices go down, they're going to be forced to sell off more and more of their investments to continue to get the same amount of income. That strategy is very common that a lot of financial firms use for clients, and I think a better approach is what we have been talking about called the independent income system. And that's where you take and you create buckets of money designed for different time frames. So stocks, in bond market, they can be great place, again, for your long-term money, money that's 10 years out that you're not going to need. But if you're going to need that money short-term, you could really get into trouble. So, think about the person who retired in 2007 and had all of their money still in the stock market, then took some withdrawals off their stock market account. We know in 2008, during that major market decline, at one point the market was down 50%. So not only was the investor down, they were selling while the market was down. And then compound that, the percentage of the withdrawal that they took, that investor is almost dead in the water right into retirement time. So very challenging. Again, while things are going good and the market's healthy, now is a good time to reevaluate. They've even coined it in our industry today. It's called the retirement red zone, and that's the 5 years before retirement and then the 5 years after retirement. So if you're listening and you're in that retirement red zone, you want to make sure that you have a bucket of money that's designed to cover your income needs for the next 5 years, and maybe consider not having that money exposed to stock and bond market risk, or if you just moved into retirement. And then also you want to make sure that you have a bucket of money that's designed to give you a pay raise in the future, because whether it's healthcare costs, the automobile cost, or just inflation in general, things are going to get more expensive. And then if you have those buckets of money, you don't have to worry so much about the short term. Final thought that I would say is, if people worried a little bit about volatility, again, those folks that are close to or in retirement time, you want to find out how to have circuit breakers on part of your portfolio. So a circuit breaker is a way to shut it off if and when bad things happen. So again, if you're listening today and another major market downturn happens and you don't know what the impact that would be on your portfolio, or you can't confidently say what the exit strategy would be on how to stop the downturn in the portfolio, have a conversation with us about our independent income system. Have a conversation with us about our circuit breaker technology. We love talking to our listeners one-on-one. And of course, we always have the video library available at our YouTube channel with lots of wealth of information.
So those buckets are very, very valuable, and those are much different than the coffee can buried in the backyard. I mean, it's the buckets of money that you need set aside are very, very important, and we've talked about that in great detail before. And one of those buckets, like you said, is the healthcare expenses and that. I mean, that's a great concept, and before I came here, I never really paid much attention to that, but I use that concept all the time. It's awesome.
Yeah, so absolutely. Take a look. It's, again, what we
It was a couple weeks ago
coined-
that we talked about it.
So there again, it's what we've talked about called the independent income system, which is our methodology and philosophy. We've got about a 15-minute video, again, on our YouTube channel. Just type in the independent income system, and you can find out where I see some of the threats and opportunities right now in the market with those different buckets of money that we talk about within our overall planning approach. And then a lot of times people leave the office and say, now's the time I actually fully understand what the investment approach is, of how to put it together. And then once we get the investments kind of put together in that approach, then the question becomes, well, what can blow it up? And, oftentimes for somebody close to or in retirement time, one of the things that could blow it up is an unexpected or unplanned for a healthcare crisis. And that's where, again, Scott with America's Medicare Associates and his group and team can kind of come in and make sure that you have an umbrella put over top of that. Last, dealing with making sure that you are managing the estate in the most efficient manner, whether that's working with your attorney to get legal documents updated, making sure that you're double checking your beneficiary designations, just again, looking at all the things. And I guess, at this time of the year with the holidays kind of here and among us, it makes us be thankful for what we have, but blessed also to be spending time with those that we love and care about. So think about if there's one family member that you want to disown, it's probably Uncle Sam.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways, to help with that through what we were talking about before earlier with some of the tax planning strategies, being able to look at your own individual situation, saying, what can we do this year? and what can we do in future years to help minimize the overall taxes that a family pays, then all the way through to if and when there is money left over, how do you pass that money on to the next generation? Because it's my personal belief that a traditional retirement vehicle may be one of the least efficient vehicles in the future to transfer wealth. And because I think that could be an area where the IRS has a bullseye on retirement accounts. They asked that famous robber, Willie Sutton, I think was his name, why do you rob banks? Do you remember what he said?
Tell me.
That's where the money is.
That's where the money's at. Yeah, okay, yeah.
And if we look at retirement accounts, it's usually the biggest or second biggest assets that an investor owns. So by being proactive, looking at if legacy planning is important to you, over the holidays, I would encourage you to take some time, double check your beneficiary designations, and talk to a financial professional. Certainly you can talk to us about ways that we can help bring this all together, again, as today's show that we talked about, with the tools and resources to be able to make it all happen for you and your family. And I guess, again, it's this time of year that makes you start to think a little bit about family and holidays. And, it's nice that we can finally get together. I know last year was challenging. Last year was difficult. You know?
Yeah. Looking forward to it, actually, to hang out with some of the family and friends that we haven't been hanging out with the last couple of years. Is very important to touch base with them again, because like you said, there may be things going on in their lives that they're a little private about, but you take the opportunity to help people out, and this is the greatest time of the year to do that.
So again, to reach out to the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, give a call, 419-794-3030. They're available online, available online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. And we want to thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Hope you enjoy the kickstart of the holiday season here. And guys, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with the final word.
Well, I want to personally thank all of the listeners and viewers out there, and take time to share what you're thankful for, and God bless you all, and hopefully everybody has a very Merry Christmas and holiday season and safe.
All right, we're clear.
That's a wrap. Did we completely lose you, Chris?
There's no song, but there was a good 2-second delay that built up at the end. No. Hang on. I